sudden my brother started to fall victim to some of the things and some of the negative influences out there. And to tell you the truth, here's a straight A student who was very talented. By the time he was 17, he had been arrested and he went to jail and he didn't finish high school. Now here I am, 11 months and 3 weeks behind him, trying to figure this whole thing out. We had the same thing going on in the household, but here's a major difference. I had a lady named Miss Fiedler, and to this day, you know, we have a great relationship because she was my big when I didn't even know what a big was, okay? Miss Fiedler saw this young man, and my sister, honestly, another thing that happens, my older sister at age 16, she had a child and she left home and dropped out of school. So I'm number 3 coming through there. And so my brother's story, we were just like this. My sister, she'd already quit school, had a child, you know, things happen. And now here's number 3, and Miss Fiedler, our principal in our school, enough other people kind of came around and said, you know, Kemp number 3 is gonna make it. We're gonna figure this out, right? So this is the part that changes the game. I had always tried to get really good grades in school because I was 4'11" in the 8th grade, and you better have good grades if you're not very tall. Something better happen. So at the end of the day, you know, I did grow up 6 feet now. I'm proud to say it. 4 or 5 feet, 3 1/4, but I'm gonna claim 6. Okay. So at any rate, I didn't know what was gonna be next. I said I'm gonna go to a military so I can get the GI Bill, and help pay for college. But I knew I kind of wanted to go to college, and in my town, you know, basically everybody went to the military and dropped out of school. That's what a lot of kids did. Well, Miss Fiedler, my guidance counselor, she got a hold of me when I was a sophomore. Now in a school that has 1,600 kids, you don't have time. You know, you have 400 kids maybe that you're dealing with at a time, and for her to take time out with me and said, come on in here, I remember you when your sister was your age, and she didn't make it, but you're gonna make it. Well, she sat down with me and she said, where do you want to go to school? What do you want to be? And I said, I want to be a doctor. And so she said, well, let's make sure you're on the right path. Well, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. So now comes around where now I'm 5'11". I'm feeling pretty good, right? Colleges started recruiting me. I became a pretty good football player. And colleges started recruiting me, but Miss Fiedler said, remember that dream you had about being a doctor. Make sure you're not just chasing some high-powered school for athletics. Make sure you continue to invest and get the best education you possibly can, because you're only one injury away from this thing going away. So long story short, recruiting happens, and she convinced the principal of my high school. Now my mother, you have to understand, I played sports my whole life. That was sort of our outlet, and sometimes people judge kids by how many sports they play, but sometimes that's the only place where you feel like a champion. So we played sports the whole time. My mother never saw me play, not once. Not one game ever in my whole career had she seen me play, because she was busy raising the rest of the kids and so forth, and she didn't even pick us up for practice. We had to get a ride to practice and a ride back, and my kids laughed about it. I said, no, that's true. Now, we missed practice because we didn't have a ride. Now you're gonna do that. So some of these things that you guys do in terms of transporting kids to places, I mean, that's real talk, that's real. And I remember those days of not having even a ride to practice. That's something I really wanted to do. But at any rate, my high school principal, I was getting recruited, and the schools were paying for trips to fly some, and then some you had to drive. My principal stopped and took me on a weekend to visit colleges like he was my father. A high school principal who has that's not in his job description to do something like that, but took me to the colleges, and literally I did my overnight stay with the students, and then he was basically my dad. So he came back and he represented a father that I didn't even have growing up. To this day, you know, my father's a question mark in my life. But I know I had Mr. DeGrasse. But going back to Miss Fiedler. So now it's National Signing Day. And I'm lined up and I'm excited. The newspaper reporter's there. You got the flash photography. I'm all excited. You know, Troy Kemp is going to school X. I got this pen. This guy brings out this really fancy fountain pen. You know, the kind you have to dip it in the ink. It's so nice, right? So I'm getting ready to sign this thing. Well, one of the things that Miss Fiedler encouraged me to do, because I was interested in medicine, is to apply to Johns Hopkins, Brown, Princeton, and some other schools. And I said, I don't even know if I can get in. She said, no, there's no worry. You're going to get in. He said, those things that set you back before are putting you in front now, because you were able to do something with less. The other thing she did, I said, well, I can't even pay for the application fees. So she took out her checkbook. And she said, I'm writing these fees. So she filled out, she paid my application fees for 6 schools. And I sat there and I said, I can't take your money. She said, I'm just gonna loan it to you because you're gonna be successful and you can pay me back later. But I sat there and I couldn't believe that was not in her job description. She was mentoring me. I didn't even know what a mentor really was, and she was already doing that. Well, now it's signing day, fast forward, and I have that nice fountain pen ready to roll with it. And she said, well, you haven't heard from the 2 Ivy League schools yet. Now, are you going to sign even if you get into these schools? And I said, I don't know about that. And I wasn't sure because I was so enamored. Who got into an Ivy League school from Riverhead High School? Nobody did, let alone me. And I said, the coach is sitting there and he's getting kind of nervous. Like, what's going to happen? This guy going to sign or not? And she said, give me 30 minutes. And this is right around lunchtime. And I had to stall the coach out. We started talking a little bit, and I said, sir, with all due respect, man, I got to wait. So she went and she called Princeton and Brown. And she said to them, this young man is about to sign a piece of paper and go to a different school. If you are interested in him, then you better let me know right now. Now these schools, you know, they accept 10% of the applicants. They don't have to do that. But I don't know what she really said. That's what I think she said. But at the end of the day, she comes back and she said, I need to talk to you for a second. So I go back in the back room with her and she said, you know, you got in both of these schools, right? Now, I'm not saying that for any accolades. What I'm saying is that this person believed in me to a point where she just threw it out there and said, I'm gonna do something different because this is what is called for right now. So I turned around and go back to the coach and I said, unfortunately, sir, I can't sign right now. And he's like, well, here's the thing. And he's snapping that pen, that nice pen. He's gonna give me the pen, I think, but I don't get it this time. So he kind of takes off a little bit, and the news reporter is standing there, and I felt so bad that this guy was gonna do this story on me signing. And I said, sir, I'm sorry. You came all the way here to do this story, and I didn't sign. And he said, I was never doing a story on you signing. I was doing it on you. And what I'm saying is somebody told this man something that had nothing to do with football. And I know that, you know, when I look around this room and I see you guys relating these kids, every one of these kids will look in the mirror every day and see something in themselves, but they will miss more than they see. And the things you see in them that they don't see in themselves is what changes everything. And the things that Mrs. Fiedler saw in me changed everything. And the interesting thing is this. So I fast forward, I go to college, I play football, have a great time. I decide that I didn't want to be a doctor not because of not wanting to be a doctor, because I wanted to do something else. And what I wanted to do is I chose education over the other because I wanted to serve in a different way. I wanted to be like a Miss Fiedler for somebody else. And you know, for 26 years, I've been able to do that with those boys at Macaulay and at the Wilmington French School. But here's the most interesting thing about what Miss Fiedler said to me, you know, 30-something years ago. She said, you know, you can be the next, he said, you could be the president of the United States. As a matter of fact, she said, you could be the first black president of the United States. Now, here's the interesting thing. I've always called Miss Fiedler anytime I've made a significant decision in my life. I call her like she's my mom, right? Talk to my mom, talk to Miss Fiedler, right? Talk to my wife too, obviously. But at the end of the day, when Obama was elected, this is the strangest thing. If a tear comes out of your eye, just let it go because it came out of mine. When Obama was elected, our school, we had the inauguration on the screen. And I picked up my phone and I was calling her and she was calling me. And she said, I said, you remember that time that you told me about being the first black president, I could be the first black president? And she said, yeah. She said, that's what I was calling you about. And I said, well, somebody beat me to it. But at any rate, folks, I shared that story with you because, you know, sometimes people think that if they say a mentor, you have to see this person walking around with a halo or some significant job or some status. That's not true. There's no ordinary people in life. You only choose to be ordinary. So when it comes to the things that you can do to impact somebody, spending time, I learned this. I learned this at Macaulay School more than anything, because sometimes people think that you're privileged because you go to private school or you're wealthy. Well, there's a spectrum of kids. But you'd be surprised how many kids in life don't get much time with their parents. I probably spent, and I'm even good, I have a son who's probably, he spent a lot of time with me, but I guarantee you I spent cumulatively just so much more time sometimes with other people's kids. And you know what? Kids need mentors, but parents need them too. And not just to mentor the parent, but they need a mentor for their child. Because there are conversations that I can have with young people that they will never hear from a parent, because I'm objective and they're biased for whatever reason. So one thing that I've recognized and I've realized is something that's put me in this place right now to be able to speak to you, which I never thought in a million years that this migrant worker, you know, picking peaches and picking tomatoes would ever be able to do, and stand in front of someone and be in the hope business every day, right? I get to change lives every single day. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that there was someone who was not related to me, sat me down and said, you're more than you ever thought you can be. And my mama said it a million times, but they tell you that when you're born, so you don't necessarily believe it. But when that stranger walks up to you, who has they're not on payroll, and they're not in your bloodline, looks you in the eye and says something about you that you probably haven't seen in yourself, or that you needed to hear at a certain time, that's transformation. So, again, my purpose for sharing this information and sharing this message with you is this. I'm blessed to have been transformed. You know, I had a loving household. It was an interesting one, and it was complicated on many levels. But if it hadn't been for people like Miss Fiedler and Mr. DeGrosse, and even the drug dealers in the neighborhood were protecting me once they found out I was about to do my thing. They kept people away from me. It's really amazing how many people have the power to mentor who don't necessarily do it. And so I look around this room and I said, okay, if we were able to double this and triple this, which is what's happening right now, and I'm really proud to say that you guys are doing some amazing work. We are doing amazing work. But it doesn't take that much. Sometimes it takes just a few minutes to look somebody in the eye and realize and just say something to them, and then just listen to what comes back. So I want to thank you guys for giving me your undivided attention. And for a person who never thought in a million years that I would ever be on this side of the earth, the country, this part of the country, speaking to a group that's doing things that I needed so bad as a child, that I want to say thank you on behalf of every single child that you touched in your lives. And hopefully, you know, you don't get tired in the hope business. I know that. And you don't retire from the hope business. So thank y'all so much.